Welcome to the third installment of the Nissan Service Information Resource video series, just one of a number of information resources available to you. This video is the first of a two-part series on engine noise diagnosis. The open slot in the box is for the next video in the series. This month, we'll look at diagnostic and repair techniques for specific lower-end engine noises. And next month, we'll take a look or listen to upper-end engine noise diagnosis. Remember, these two videos aren't designed to replace the engine service course offered at your regional training centers, but will provide you with some timely diagnostic and repair techniques. Let's start with the four-step diagnostic process. When diagnosing lower-end engine noises, or anything for that matter, you should follow Nissan's familiar four-step diagnostic process. The process is straightforward and only takes extra time when you don't use it. When verifying an engine noise, always make sure you've heard the noise for yourself before jumping into the middle of your diagnostic routine. It's not always easy for the customer to explain the actual noise to the service advisor, but with the help of a checklist, like this one included with the video, you can make sure you get all the needed information. The service advisor should be able to provide you clear information on when the vehicle started making noise, the conditions under which the noise occurs, and whether the noise is intermittent or not. When isolating the noise, perform all of the diagnostic checks before disassembling the engine. It's too late once the engine's been disassembled. And check all possible sources of noise before reassembling the engine. You don't want to have to take the engine apart again on your dime. I'm surprised you can hear me over the racket that truck's making. Let's see what's going on. The customer is concerned about an engine noise that started a few months after the vehicle was purchased and is loudest when the truck's cold. Always start by checking the oil. It could be a cause of the noise and can keep you from doing further damage to the engine during diagnosis. You need to look at the level, check for any contaminants, and see if the oil's thin or diluted. If there's a fuel odor present, an injector might be leaking, diluting the oil and causing an overfilled condition. If any of these conditions are present, drain the oil, replace the filter, refill the engine with the right viscosity oil, and see if the noise is still there. Sometimes an oil and filter change will do the trick. Next, check the oil pressure to verify pump operation. Again, finding a problem here will keep you from further damaging the engine during the isolation step, and it's too late when the pump's on the bench. The oil quality and pressure look fine on this truck. Now, you can concentrate on listening for the noise. Make sure the condition of the engine matches the conditions under which the noise occurs. If you're looking for a cold start noise, you'll want to let the engine sit long enough to get cold before spending too much time listening. Use a stethoscope to help you isolate the noise. Start by listening for upper-end noises first. Upper-end noises are usually present at the valve cover, head, and timing chain areas. The frequency or speed of the noise can help you to determine location. Camshaft and the upper-end noises will be heard half as often as crank-related noises as the cam turns at half the speed of the crank. A timing light might help you separate a camshaft from a crankshaft noise. A cam-related noise will occur once between each flash, while a crank-related noise will occur twice. Now, listen for lower-end noises. Even if you think you've isolated the noise to the upper end, you can't be positive until you've compared it to the lower end. These noises have a way of traveling. Lower end noises can usually be picked up at the block, oil pan, and crank pulley, and will be heard twice as often as a cam-related noise. At both locations, listen to the tone of the noise. An upper end noise will usually be more of a light tapping sound, while a lower end noise will be more of a solid metal-to-metal thumping sound. Make sure to use the location, frequency, and tone of the noise when determining cause. The engine's cold, which is when the customer says the noise is loudest. So let's see what we can find out. The noise is clearly heard at the sides of the block and is going away as the engine warms up. Nothing seems to be coming from the top end. Like the title of this video says, we're dealing with a lower end noise. Before getting carried away and disassembling the engine, there are 3 checks that will confirm our lower end diagnosis and help us to pinpoint the cause. Make sure the base timing is correct. Advanced timing increases combustion pressures and may make normal noises more noticeable. Most lower-end noises will increase if you advance the timing and raise the combustion pressures. Just make sure you don't end up chasing a spark knock you caused by advancing the timing too much. As might be expected, advancing the timing increased the noise in this engine. A cylinder drop test lets us see if the noise can be isolated to an individual cylinder. This test can be performed using the Consult Active Test power balance function on compatible vehicles, or by removing the injector leads one at a time on non-Consult compatible vehicles. You don't want to just pull the plug wires without disabling the injectors, because this lets fuel wash down the cylinders. If the noise changes when a cylinder is dropped, it indicates a bearing, piston pin, or piston slap problem with that cylinder. It sounds like number 3 might be giving us a problem here. Pinching off the PCV vacuum and vent hoses increases the crankcase pressure. This increase in pressure acts to stabilize the piston and rod assembly. If the noise decreases or disappears when pinching the hoses, it indicates a piston pin or piston slap concern. Remember, some vehicles have 2 PCV valves. Sounds like we have another match. Before continuing with our isolation procedure, let's quickly review the sources of lower-end engine noise. 4 common sources of lower-end noise are main bearings, rod bearings, the piston pins, and piston slap caused by improper piston-to-cylinder fit. If main bearing clearance becomes too great, the crankshaft will strike the bearing under combustion pressures, causing a low thumping noise that can be heard at the block, oil pan, or crank pulley. Excessive rod bearing clearance causes a noise in the same manner. Rod bearing noises can be isolated by the cylinder drop test. If piston pin clearance is too great, the piston will be forced downward onto the piston pin under the pressure of combustion, causing a noise. Piston pin noises are most noticeable at the crank pulley during idle, and unlike many engine noises, after the engine has been completely warmed up. This is because the piston expands as it gets hot. The cylinder drop test and pinching off the PCV hoses also helps to isolate piston pin noises. If piston-to-cylinder fit is too loose, the combustion pressure will cause the piston to cock in the cylinder and the piston skirt to slap against the cylinder wall. Piston slap is loudest when the engine is cold, due to greater clearances caused by contraction, and will get louder when the timing is advanced. Let's take a look at our test results and see which condition they match. Base timing was within specs, and the noise increased when the timing was advanced, pointing to a lower-end noise. The cylinder drop test isolated the problem to the number 3 cylinder, indicating a rod bearing, piston pin, or piston slap noise. And the noise decreased when the PCV hoses were pinched, isolating the concern to a piston pin or piston slap noise. Because we've performed a complete diagnosis and know the noise is loudest at the sides of the block, we can pretty much isolate it to a piston slap noise at the number 3 cylinder. It's time to get to the bottom of this. If the marks on the pistons indicate that the pistons have been installed in the right direction, all we need to do is determine the piston-to-cylinder clearance and put in the right piston. Sounds too easy? You're right. There's a catch. The pistons are graded for proper fit, but the specifications are so precise that piston-to-bore clearance must be within 8/10,000ths of an inch. That's less than the thickness of a human hair. To further complicate things, the fit is so exact that the sizes of the piston grades overlap. This makes it tough to accurately measure the piston-to-cylinder clearance and select the right piston to fix the noise. Fortunately, there is another method of determining correct piston-to-cylinder clearance that will do the job for us. Even though you may have to perform the steps 3 times to verify proper piston fit, this simple, accurate procedure still takes less time and effort than trying to measure the pistons and cylinders. The specifications on this procedure are for the KA24E engine we're working on. A copy of the procedure has been included with the video. Even though this measurement can be made with the engine in the truck, we're using one that's been removed to explain the procedure as clearly as possible. To perform the measurement, you'll need to obtain 3 feeler gauges or shim stock. Each one should be at least 6 inches long and 1/2 an inch wide. The gauges should be in thicknesses of 10 ten-thousandths of an inch, 15 ten-thousandths of an inch, and 20 ten-thousandths of an inch. Since these sizes are so thin, you may have to look for them in an industrial supply house. These gauges will provide us with a simple, accurate go, no-go indication of piston fit. First, make sure the pistons were installed in the right direction by checking the dots on the crown. Pistons installed backwards can cause a piston slap condition. Then, carefully removing the pistons, inspect the cylinder for wear and make sure the piston and cylinder are okay. Then, oil the feeler gauge and place it in the bore along the main thrust surface 90 degrees to the wrist pin, where the cylinder wears most. Oil the original piston and place it upside down in the cylinder. Now, remove the feeler gauge, judging the effort needed to pull it out. The ideal fit will allow the 10 ten-thousandths feeler gauge to be removed with little effort. The 15 ten-thousandths gauge to be removed with high effort. And the 20 ten-thousandths gauge to be stuck. This will confirm that the original piston was the problem. Now, perform the procedure again with a new piston that's the same grade as the original. New pistons should be ordered based on the results. If the 20 ten-thousandths gauge moves freely, a piston of 1 or 2 grades higher will be necessary. Always check the fit of the replacement piston using the same procedure. Since there is overlap in the grade sizes, several of the same grade pistons should be available to select the proper fit. If grade 3 proves to be too small, the block will have to be bored and new oversized pistons installed. Reinstall all the pistons using new rings and reassemble the engine. After assembly, recheck the engine to make sure the noise is gone and no other noises are present. If pinching the PCV hose didn't change the noise, our isolation procedure would have indicated a bearing noise, and we would need to inspect the bearings. Start by loosening the main and rod bearing bolts with a torque wrench, checking the breakaway torque against specs. Loose bolts may be contributing to the noise. Now, visually inspect the bearings. Both the rod and main bearings should look like this, with even wear and no scratches or gouges. In addition, make sure to inspect the thrust surface on the number 3 main bearing. Worn thrust surfaces have been known to cause vehicles to stall when the driver steps on the clutch. If the bearings show signs of uneven wear, it indicates an align bore problem or a damaged rod. If the crankshaft is reused, the journal diameter should be measured and appropriate size bearing selected. If there is no wear or a new crankshaft is needed, the bearings are graded from the factory for proper fit, and you'll have to determine which grade bearings to use. The grade number on the crankshaft is added to the number on the block to determine the correct bearing grade. Rod bearing grades are determined by simply using the grade number on the crankshaft. This grading procedure is explained in the service manual. We've covered a lot of information in this video, including general engine noise diagnostic procedures, specific lower-end isolation techniques, and the causes and corrections of lower-end engine noise concerns, including a new technique for piston grade selection. Now, it's your turn to perform some noise diagnosis for credit. We're going to play 3 engine noises for you, and you're going to identify the most probable source of the noise using the mail-in card included with the video. After you've identified the noises on the card, mail it back to Nissan. You'll get credit in the SHAD system for the training you've just completed. Let's listen to the first noise. This noise sounds loudest at the side of the block when the engine's cold, and quiets down when the number 2 injector lead is pulled. It also changes when the PCV hoses are pinched. If you can identify the noise, pause the VCR and write your answer on the card. Start the video again to listen to the second noise. If you need to, you can rewind the video and listen to the first noise again. This second noise can really be heard at the oil pan and crank pulley, and is more noticeable after the engine's warmed up. It gets louder when the timing is advanced, and changes when a cylinder drop test is performed, but not when the PCV hoses are pinched. If you can identify this noise, pause the VCR and write your answer on the card. Start the video again to listen to the last noise. If you need to, you can rewind the video and listen to the noise again. This noise sounds more like a tap than a knock and seems to be intermittent. Advancing the timing, performing a cylinder drop test, or pinching the PCV lines doesn't change it at all. If you can identify this noise, pause the VCR and write your answer on the card. If you need to, you can rewind the video and listen to the noise again. Don't worry if you had trouble with that last noise. We didn't expect you to know it. You'll hear more about it in the next month's Service Information Resource video, Engine Noise Diagnosis, Upper End Concerns. Make sure to mail in your card for training credit, and thanks for watching.